Impressionism is an artistic movement that had its beginnings in France around 1870. Viewed as a reaction to traditional art, Impressionism was the first of many modern art movements. Impressionist paintings are usually full of vibrant color and take advantage of the different effects light can have upon a scene. Impressionist paintings also tend to capture fleeting moments of everyday life. Louis Leroy, an art critic in the 1870s, was the first to use the word impressionist in describing this painting by Monet entitled Impression Sunrise. Leroy used this word impressionist in a condescending and satiric manner because he thought the painting appeared undefined and unfinished and was haphazardly painted as an impression of a scene. Before we delve into the characteristics of impressionist paintings, it is important to consider the historical and cultural context from which the movement arose. The mid-1800s were a time of transition for France. In 1848, Napoleon III was elected as the president of the Second Republic. However, in 1851, he performed a coup d'etat, and France was thrust into a new era in which he rebuilt Paris, waged war, and introduced new economic policies to France. It was amongst all this change that the Académie des Beaux-Arts continued to remain the dominant force of the French art scene. The purpose of the Academy was to preserve and promote the traditional standards of French art. Such traditional paintings tended to be conservative portraits, have religious themes, or depict historical subjects. These paintings were painted with muted colors and portrayed a realistic depiction of the subject. Here we have The Veiled Circassian Woman by Jean-Léon Gérôme. This painting embodies the traditional values admired by the Academy. The portrait of this upper-class woman was painted with sharp lines and conservative colors. There is little evidence of brushstroke, and the painting succeeds in depicting this woman as she would look in real life. Each year, the Academy hosted a Salon de Paris, an art show in which paintings chosen by members of the Academy were displayed and awarded prizes. For an artist at the time, the Academy's selection of his or her piece brought much prestige and value to the artist. In the 1860s and 70s, members of the Academy saw an increasing number of submissions by younger artists that painted in a lighter and brighter manner. A group of these younger artists often gathered at Café Gerbois, pictured here. It was at this café that Edouard Manet led discussion with Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, Alfred Sisley, and Frédéric Bazille about the brighter, unconventional style often used in their paintings. These discussions further fueled the fire of the movement we know today as Impressionism. However, because these paintings did not exemplify the traditional standards according to the Academy, the Salon rejected them year after year. One such rejection was the painting entitled The Luncheon on the Grass by Edouard Manet. The Academy rejected this painting in 1863 because it depicted a nude woman in a park with clothed men in a contemporary setting, a rejection that appalled many in the art community. After multiple years of rejection from the Salon, these unconventional artists desperately needed to display their work in order to sell their paintings and gain recognition. Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, and Sisley formed the Cooperative and Anonymous Association of Painters, Sculptors, and Engravers. They continued to recruit more artists such as Cézanne, Morisot, and Degas. Membership in this association required all members to refuse participation in the Salon de Paris. In May of 1874, the same month as the Salon de Paris, the Anonymous Association pooled their money to rent out a studio and host their own art exhibition. Despite the fact that the exhibition received much criticism from some art critics, others enjoyed the independence and rebellion of these paintings. It was at this exhibition that Louis Leroy coined the term Impressionist based on this Monet painting, as I explained earlier in the presentation. Now that I've explained a brief history of the Impressionist movement, I will go into more detail about the subjects of the painting and the techniques the artists used. One thing very characteristic of Impressionism was the depiction of scenes from everyday life. Impressionists worked to capture the beauty of reality in contemporary society. For example, Renoir's Luncheon on a Boating Party captures a group of friends simply enjoying food and wine together on a balcony. In addition to capturing everyday life, Impressionists often painted still life. Painting still life allowed the Impressionists to experiment with the depiction of changing light and shadow on the look of ordinary objects. Cézanne's painting entitled Still Life with Fruit Basket is arguably one of the most well-known Impressionists in still life paintings. You can see the use of vibrant colors Cézanne used to bring beauty to commonplace objects here. The Impressionists distanced themselves from the somber tones of earlier paintings. They generally avoided the use of black and earth colors. Bright, contrasting colors were put onto the canvas next to or on top of each other, often without prior mixing or subsequent blending. Impressionists developed a way of applying pigment called broken brushstrokes. In this technique, the artist applies the paint in a mosaic-like patch, creating a rough or irregular surface texture. In Pissarro's painting, The Boulevard Montmartre at Night, you can see that as a whole, the painting is a depiction of this busy Parisian boulevard. However, if you zoom in, you can see the thick mosaic-like brushstrokes that are characteristic to Impressionist paintings. After 1875, Impressionism became widely accepted and began to influence artists in other European countries. Prominent painters in Germany, Italy, and England began to incorporate Impressionist characteristics into their paintings. By the end of the 1800s, Impressionism had made its way across the Atlantic to the United States. Perhaps one of the most prominent non-French Impressionists was American Marie Cassatt, depicted in this self-portrait. One of the few women during the Impressionist movement, Marie Cassatt exhibited her work among the Impressionists in Paris. You can see in her self-portrait the thick mosaic-like brushstrokes that are so characteristic to Impressionists. Not only did Impressionism spread across countries, but it also spread across disciplines of art. To an extent, Impressionist characteristics were found in music. Composers such as Claude Debussy tried to capture and portray in their work a fleeting moment in time. The disconnected parts of his music are brought together by the imagination of the listener, just as the separate strokes of color in an Impressionist painting form a complete image in the eye of the viewer. In addition to Impressionistic music, artists also applied Impressionism to sculpture. In sculpture, artists used rough materials that created a textured and almost unfinished-looking surface, similar to that of Impressionist paintings. Here we see Rodin's The Thinker. Note the rough texture of the figure. By 1890, Impressionism had begun to fade as a movement. Differences in individual styles increased as artists moved in separate directions. Vincent van Gogh was one such artist that came to fruition at the end of the Impressionist movement. Here we can see Van Gogh's chair with more definite lines than other Impressionist paintings. The various styles that grew out of Impressionism are called post-Impressionism. As the first modern art movement, Impressionism had a huge influence on the development of art in the 20th century. According to Nicolas Pioche of Web Museum Paris, Impressionists attempted to accurately and objectively record visual reality in terms of transient effects of light in color. This new way of looking at and recording the world left a legacy of thousands of paintings and sculptures and served as a springboard for other art movements of the 20th century.